Hey, welcome back, everybody. And first and foremost, Happy New Year. So I know that technically the market opened for the new year on Friday, which was January 2nd, but relative volume was very low. A lot of traders didn't even trade on Friday. So they're anxiously awaiting to see what happens this week as well as next week. So I would not expect significant volume right out of the gate. Typically, we will build into that position over the next 2-3 weeks. Now, there's obviously going to be a little bit of a wild card from a global perspective with the apprehension of Maduro in Venezuela. So we're going to want to watch and see how the commodities markets respond, especially oil. And I am going to take a look at a couple of oil stocks that I think we should at least keep an eye on. Now, could there be some little bit of volatility that's introduced? Absolutely. So Russia, China, Mexico have all come out in extreme opposition around the US's position that it took this past weekend. Okay, so global markets are going to have just more tension by nature, which we should see transcend into volatility. But time will tell. We'll watch and see what the futures market does, and then we'll just trade the charts. Now, the first week of January, we are back to our normal reporting schedule. Okay, so with the government reopened, we're now getting all the data from November, December, everything that we've been looking for. So Monday, not too much is going on, but you do have to be aware of ISM manufacturing. Okay, so what's going on specifically with manufacturing numbers within the United States? Tuesday, we have the U.S. Services PMI that we're going to want to watch for December. I'm not really worried about the Fed President Tom Barkin speaking. That should be a moot point. Wednesday is going to be important, though, is ADP employment numbers. Okay, so remember, the Fed has two mandates. One is inflation, two is employment. So we're going to want to keep an eye on employment, job openings, as well as, again, what's going on with factory orders. Going to be increasingly important as we move forward. Now, these factory orders are all the way back from October, so the street could just kind of shrug those off and say, that was 60 days ago. Who really cares? Let's look at Thursday. This is where we're going to get government data. Okay, initial jobless claims, going to be very important to see. Do jobless claims align what ADP told us the day before? Or there's going to be a huge bifurcation, which we've seen in the past? And then you're questioning, well, who's telling the truth? ADP or the U.S. government? I'll let you decide. We're also going to see the trade deficit, U.S. productivity, and again, consumer credit. So what is the strength of the overall consumer is going to be very important on a go-forward basis. Then Friday, we are going to round the week up with, again, more employment numbers, unemployment rate. Okay, it has been ticking higher. So we were, 4.6, 4.7. Do we start to hit 5%? And start increasing from there? That will put a damper on the overall economy if the consumer stops spending. We're also going to see hourly wages as well as housing starts. So all in all, a fairly robust week. So, as I always advise, you just don't be in a trade when news is going to drop. Okay? Let it drop. Let's watch how the market reacts, and then we'll go from there. Let's take a look at some names in the charts. We'll start with SPY. So we did have a good rebound, right, coming up here on the first day of the new year, right? A little bit of a sell-off and then a positive close at the final hour. So my levels are still good on SPY. To go long, I think you want to be above 683.66. You could see how that was a resistance level pretty much the entire afternoon on Friday. Okay, so we really want to get above that in order to go to 684, 685, and higher. Excuse me. Now, what's been lagging with less strength has been overall QQQ. Okay, so SPY has had a more robust recovery because we're seeing oil move higher. We're seeing banks move higher. We're seeing airlines, auto, everything in a broader, widening market move to the upside, whereas tech, we're still kind of a little bit muted. And you're going to see that in some of the individual names that we're going to look at. So if we drop below 612.44, I do think you consider puts. back to the downside with 609 being a price target. Now, mind you, we could bounce somewhere mid-range here, so make sure that you are trailing your stops up into profits. Let's take a look at Apple. Apple actually had a downgrade from an overweight to a hold. So I'll be curious to see how that comes into play. Basically, the premise is it's trading at a very expensive PE multiple. And so should Apple be trading at the multiple it's trading at with no AI, no new innovation? Sure, they launched a new iPhone, they had record sales with it, but now what's next? So we'll want to see, do people start to take money off the table in Apple, thinking that it's probably not going to move up significantly higher? Now, on Friday, Apple really sold off, right? If you caught this short from 277, heck, I wish I caught it, for crying out loud, to 268, I mean, that was quite the moneymaker, to say the least. Let's look at Amazon. Amazon had relative strength, but exact same thing. Really high pressure selling on Friday. Okay, I mean, we moved all the way from, again, this would have been another phenomenal short, 235 all the way down to 224. So if we drop below 224, definitely consider puts down to 222. Although I do think if we come in with some volume on Monday, we might see some dip buying in this name, being that it was the worst performer of the Mag 7 in 2025. Microsoft, another struggle all day long. I mean, this thing was just trending lower from the get-go, okay? So you can see why SPY is having more relative strength than QQQ. But if we can't break above 472.89, right? Possibly, a put position, knowing that we could get stopped out here at any of these pivot lows. But if we can get back above and we see strength in overall technology, then Microsoft could be a buy. Tesla missed its production numbers, and so therefore that was the precipitous for the sell-off on Friday. Again, overall relative weakness, kind of questioning, well, what's Elon going to do next? So a lot of the rumor was around his $1 trillion pay package, robotics, things that are going to happen in the future is what originally propelled this stock all the way back up to almost 500, but now we are seeing quite the dramatic pullback, right? I mean, we're up here, and now we are back down at 435 and change. Could this go lower? Possibly, but let's also, while we're here, let's just do a fib from a pivot low to a pivot high. They really are in the middle of this golden zone, right? So you have to be careful here, because if they decide to buy it on the dip, this is the highest probability of where we're going to buy. Now, if they lose 427, the 618 fib, then my next target would be the 786. So I'm going to leave these fibs on here because I think it's always good to watch how they act while the market is open. NVIDIA had some strength, although I did see a headline come out today that said Trump is making some changes, again, with the CHIP Act regarding China. Again, what he does not want to hear is that China is in disagreement with the invasion of Venezuela, right? And so if you don't agree with what the United States is doing, then there are penalties in one form or another. So we'll want to watch NVIDIA and see how this behaves. But again, if we get below 185, I think you could definitely take a short. The stock isn't moving a lot, right? So it was up nicely on Friday, and then they started to sell into the afternoon hour, and we were able to get a good put trade after we did this live while the market was open, right? When everything was starting to roll over. So let's take a look here, right? We were opening really strong on Friday, okay? And then just a grind lower, but it was this drop that really caused the QQQ to move lower, push, and then finally the dump down to 188. So be a little bit more careful with NVIDIA. But I do think, if we can hold this 188.14, you probably will get a bounce. And I'm going to actually, because our price levels are so darn close, you could see here where they almost made a double bottom on the day, but not with a lot of strength, right? 15 cents difference. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the longer duration price level, because that's just going to have greater support with more touch points. So let's look at AMD. again, kind of ranging here. Again, nice, really good liftoff on Friday. A little bit of a sell on the chip sector. It held fairly good back almost up to its high. Now, I don't want to take a trade unless we really break below this pivot low. But then again, you're going to have to be careful, right? As you get back down into these ranges here, ideally, you'd want to see this 219.20 flush. So I'm going to go ahead and make that an interim level, but these would be your guard stops if you were in puts to go short, where they could bounce it and the market will find liquidity back higher. Let's look at Palantir. Palantir really struggled. I think it was down 5 or 6%. Now, this one will be interesting, right? Because again, with invasion of Venezuela, how much did Palantir have to play in with the data and the overall technology that was used to get an in as to how things were moving throughout the country? Okay, so this is, one of the Department of War's greatest partners, and they're using AI and technology that no other company can actually provide to support the U.S. government. So this is also, one of their largest customers, the U.S. government. So watch and see how this one responds. I do like this 165 for a potential bounce. I don't know that I really want to short this. Let me go to a 4-hour time frame and see where we're at. Yeah, we got a couple pivot lows here. Okay, a good pivot low before they really rocketed this higher. So indecision, right? You can see this on the final 4-hour, right? A lot of selling all morning long, but do keep an eye on this 167, okay? If this holds, possibly, right, we start to move to the upside back to 170s. But if this breaks, I think you could at least get a put down to the candle low, possibly down here. Now, on the higher time frame also, we are running negative with 921.50 EMAs. So right now, a lot of negative traction on this. I like puts probably better than I actually like calls because we're just really going against the trend. Let's look at Oracle. Same thing here. We got a gap fill back above, but this thing's been doing nothing, right? Just kind of really oscillating back here within this channel. So we need to break out of this channel with some meaningful strength to really go higher. Now we do have, what is this, a dividend that's coming up? It's only 50 cents, which is not a lot on a $192 stock. So we need to get out of this channel 190, 199 to 198.31 to either move to fill the gap below or move higher to fill the gap above. And then Broadcom is another one I want to look at, right? If we can get above the 352.96, again, we have a nice gap up above, but if we can't, right, this thing is currently trending lower to the downside. And you can see where they broke above for a very short period of time, and then we got the sell-off on Friday right on the open. Okay, so it was earlier in the morning, and right now looks like we're going to start to trend lower. Let's take a look at a couple of the Bitcoin-related stocks. We'll look at Robinhood. Again, just kind of holding on at this 115 level. I think this is a good buy level for calls. If we break below it, then puts. Okay, so this is all going to be dependent upon what is Bitcoin doing. Now, the interesting thing is Bitcoin did catch a bid on Friday, okay, back up into the $90,000 range, but we did not see Robinhood or Strategy, MSTR, move higher with it. Okay, they actually were just kind of stuck in the mud. So if this thing breaks this 155.61, I definitely think you should try and take puts down to 120. And if we get extreme weakness in Bitcoin, then this would be the ideal play overall. Let's take a look at it. Here we go. This is the, let's see, which one? Here we go. Make sure I get the one with my charts on it, right? So, yep. Okay, so this is where we are back up to 90,000. Right, we got some resistance up here, 92, 93, and then, greater support down lower. So this is what I would keep an eye on right here. Are going to be these low pivots. And because that's on a 4-hour time frame, I'm going to change the color of that. And then also, right, this pivot right here. So I think you could get a fair amount of buyers down here. And we should be able to confirm this with the supply and demand indicator. So give it a second to load. It's working a little slow. There we go. Right. You have a fair amount of buyers down here, really strong buyers at this price level. But if you get below 80,000, pushing down into the 70s and below 74, then it's just kind of lights out. So keep an eye on this. I think it makes all the sense in the world. What I thought, again, that was odd on Friday is that Bitcoin was, moving quite a bit higher, right? From, 89 up into the 90s, but your MicroStrategy and your hood weren't doing anything. So let's also take a look at Coinbase, right? Because that's another play that you can watch. Coin bouncing off our price level 226. I do have a reject up above at 246. Let's look at this on, again, a higher time frame, 4 hour, right? Looks like there's more pressure probably to the downside than there is to the upside. And so where you can actually take your put trade, right? If we can't start to get above this 21 EMA right here, then this would be another area, which is also ironically, right, this candle wick high, where you could go low. So we got some additional price levels in here if you want to watch Coinbase as well. Let's talk oil, because obviously that's the talk of the administration right now with Venezuela. Chevron is one that I would watch. 158.88, potential reject. You can see we got a lot of sellers here. But if this starts to take off, there is a gap fill up above. Okay, so if we get a lot of relative strength to the upside, what I'd love to see is a pullback down here to 152 to actually go long, but do keep an eye on these price targets for Chevron. The other one is going to be Halliburton. Okay, so another unified part of the oil industrial space. But again, same thing. We got a little bit of resistance up here at 30, but if these things catch fire, they can really go, because let's take a look at this in the past, right? I mean, this was in the past, and you can see we got this triple top up here pretty much, right? We'll mark that right there, up to 43. I think there's a lot of runway for some of these oil stocks in the most recent. And then if we go all the way back here, right, and this is going to be in 2014, look at where we were up here at 74, and then was that the all-time high? Let me take a look. Yep, all the way up here at 70. So you can see that when these things get traction, right, they can really move with some strength. 57, 58, which would, almost be a 70% move in this stock. So Halliburton, keep an eye on this one as to how that is impacted. And then Schlumberger is another one, SLB, okay? Again, once these things get strength in the oil sector, we should start to see some rotation into it, because it's been pretty much last year, left for dead, right? But I definitely think, let's just follow the news, right? What's going on from an overall news event. We get above this 40-80 with some overall strength. I think you could absolutely play this one to the upside, okay? So 40-80, 41, I really like this as well. So let's keep an eye on that. Again, be patient. It is a new year, so everybody is starting back at zero. And if you're not already journaling your trades in TradeZella, I highly encourage you to do so. Because if you can't figure out what you're doing wrong, then you're just bound to keep repeating that same mistake over and over and over again, which will elude any success that you're going to have over the entire calendar year. Okay, so we got some really good price levels here. And with that, everybody, have a fantastic Sunday. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for live trading. Again, Happy New Year. It's good to be back with you. Take care.